Hi guys, and welcome to episode 1 of the Chronicles of a Touring Musician. So, in this show I'm going to be describing you a whole bunch of funny, hilarious things that happens whilst I'm on tour. However, this first story didn't actually happen when I was on tour, it happened a little bit earlier. The story, as the name suggests, is basically how I ended up performing on a Chinese talent show. So, to understand this, we'd have to go back a bit. I was in year 10, which makes me 16 at the time. And basically at the time, my year went for a music tour. My entire year at school went for a music tour in China, and they had a really, really good time. And they'd come back and always tell me, oh, you gotta go to China, you gotta go to China. So obviously, year 10 we would come home and tell my dad, I really want to go to China. I couldn't go at the time because I was going to a different tour. I was doing another music tour actually. But it was with another school, so it was like an inter-school sort of thing. And I went on that instead, but my dad one time came home and he was like, look, if you're still set on going to China, I think I might have found a way for you to go there. And I was like, great. And also, just to give you some info, I was learning Chinese at the time. I did have a phrase book, and that's basically how I got around though, because I didn't really know much Chinese. So I just would use a phrase book and got through the whole thing. So yeah, basically my dad was like, hey, you know, my workmate, he's got a best friend and I believe his brother's over there, so if you just go and stay with him, you know, you could go there for a couple of months. He's a teacher, you can spend some time at a school and, you know, get better at Chinese, all that sort of good stuff. And I was like, yeah, that sounds pretty good. So then I basically went on this opportunity, and it turned out that my dad's workmate had some family friends, and those family friends had recently moved to Australia and sold like everything they owned to this other Chinese family, so they like felt like they needed to give them a massive favor back. And I ended up going, this was like a grandma, I ended up living with like the nephew's girlfriend's brother of this family. So no one knew anyone basically. They didn't even know why I was there originally when they first came to pick me up at the airport, so it was pretty funny. But yeah, I ended up getting there safely, and I was in Xinjiang, which by the way is really poor. It's like under the Xiamen province. But basically, I'd go there and I started going to school there, and it was really strange because people hadn't seen, you know, a white male of my age before, so they'd come up and like try and talk to me. They'd be like really interested, and I had a really good time there. Now, when I was at that school, alright, all the kids that, by the way, I was going to the number 5 school, and in China they rate schools from like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 10, and then I believe that's like the cutoff point, and every school after that it doesn't get a rating. So I was going to like the 5th best school, and it's super competitive there. Not only do they wake up at like 7, and most of them go till 7, some of them have night classes after that, and then also study and come back and repeat that entire cycle. They're also ordered in class. So if, for example, number 1 will sit like right in the front row, the last and number 28 or whatever will sit right at the back. So it's super competitive. It was a really good experience just to actually like hang out with people my age and learn a whole bunch of different things. But basically, I'd always go out for lunch with them and out for dinner. And one time after we played basketball, one of them came up to me and he was like, hey man, you should get on that bus. And by the way, this is like your typical day in China. There would always be something different that would end up happening at night because these guys would make me do a whole bunch of stuff. They're like, okay, cool. And so I went on this bus, and they didn't ask any questions because, again, if you're like a white male of my age at the time, you could do anything in China. You'd just be allowed to go anywhere. It was really strange. And but I went on, and I noticed they didn't get on. And it was something I realized after, because I saw the school prefect there that I was also friends with. You'd only be allowed on this bus if you'd done really good things. So, but they just let me on anyway, and I didn't really know where this bus was going, so it basically took off. We ended up going into the city centre, and we ended up parking right outside the main city's broadcast tower. So every city, if it's a certain size, will have a broadcast tower in China, so it can provide everyone in that city with some media. And a lot of it is actually made in those cities, like this show. So I got out of this bus, and we all got out and we started walking all together, and all these like security guards and stuff like that started checking everyone's ID, making sure they were from the right school and they had an invitation. And of course they wouldn't check me, I would just get to walk straight through. And basically we got to this final door and we opened it, and as I walked in, it was like a massive, would have been about 1,000 seats there. So it was a really, really big room. And I noticed that it was looking down upon this stage, and it sort of did look like the stage show of like Australian Idol or The Voice or whatever type of like voice talent show you would have in your countries. So I sit down and everyone's sort of like looking around like, oh, well, who's this guy? And then they sort of introduced the show, and the main host came out, and he started doing his like main host thing, introducing the show, and then he sort of looks up at me and he points, and then he said this thing, and I didn't really know what he said, so I actually got my friends to translate it for me, and he was like, is that a white guy in the crowd? And like pointing at me, and he sort of like walked up to me before anyone had said anything. And he was like, he got on the microphone, he's like, what's your name, you know, in Chinese, and I was like, I said what I'd been saying for the past month, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but I said, 我是克里斯, right, and he was like, and then everyone's like started clapping, just because I basically said, yeah, my name is Chris, and then he was like, do you know any songs, and I was like, oh, no, I'm going to have to sing. I was a year 10, you know, boy, raised in Australia, you don't really sing much. Oh man, I'm gonna have to sing the song. And I was like, I said, would you like me to sing in English or in Chinese? Which I don't know why I would offer that, like if I knew any Chinese songs to begin with, which I didn't. And then everyone started going, Chinese, Chinese, Chinese in the crowd. And I was like, oh man, what am I gonna do? Now, when I was going to school, being driven by this teacher, he would always have this like, your 10 top Chinese songs classics. I remember 2 of them on that list. One of them was called Huo Lai, or something like that, I don't remember. And then the other one was called Dwayman the New Hai Kang Guo Lai, which is the song that I sang. But basically, I didn't know the song. I just knew like the chorus, and I knew maybe like the first 4 words. So everyone was sort of waiting, and I would have taken my time, like 30 seconds going, oh, I'm not keen. Like, no, do it. I'm not keen. All right, whatever, I'll do it. So I started singing this song, and literally from the first word I said, everyone in the room started singing, and they all saved me because I wouldn't have known after 4 words. I would have been completely, I would not have had a clue. But the camera stayed on me, and so after I said like the 5 words that I knew, you just saw me mouth words that were completely incorrect with the song. Which, come to think of it, is quite ironic because that's normally what we get in Australia when we're watching Chinese or Asian TV shows that's sort of out of sync when they translate them. That's what I was doing in China. And but yeah, basically I started singing this song, everyone got really into it, and yeah, I'll play the song. This is what it sounds like.
对面的女孩看过来，看过来，看过来。
But yeah, so I'm singing this song to them, and then I sort of stop. I just get up and bow because I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I'm definitely not going to the verse. I've already screwed up the chorus. I've already said the only 4 words I know in the chorus, so I'm definitely not doing the verse. And so yeah, I basically took a bow, and everyone clapped, and I managed to get out of that situation. So if there's a lesson to be learned, it's if you're going to go to a country, learn at least 1 song from that country, because it might end up saving you from having a really bad scenario. And that's sort of where the music story stops. But I'm going to tell you one more story because something hilarious happened after this. So on the way home, I knew the prefect, which was called Ke Wenjiao. I knew the prefect lived really close to the teacher that I was staying with. So I was like, I'll just go to your house, and then after I'll sort of just walk home back to mine. And this guy, the teacher that I was staying with, was like an absolute worrywart. If he would have known that I was out, he would have freaked out. So I was like, I'm better off just meeting him at home, and it'll all go down well. Also, one side story as well, I got given a QQ account, which is like Chinese Messenger. It's like a Facebook sort of thing, but it's more used as like Facebook Messenger. And before this show, I had like 100 kids that had added me in the school that I was in. After this show, the next day, I woke up and I had like 3,000 invites. So I don't know how it spread, but that QQ account got ridiculously massive over that one night. And so yeah, basically, when I'm going home with this prefect, and he's like, hey man, on the way home, we're going to stop by a wedding. And I was like, oh, I've never been to a Chinese wedding, that's going to be fun, let's do it. Turns out. So basically, we go to this wedding, right? And as you enter this wedding, now I don't know if this is the same in all Chinese weddings, but all the single people have to go in the single tables. And all the guys in couples, that their couple will sit with the couples. So the first thing that happens is I lose the only person I know, because he's got to go with his family in the couple's table, and I got to go in the singles table. In this wedding, there's a whole bunch of Chinese taxi drivers that have somehow managed to get into this wedding. Just to describe your Chinese taxi driver, he doesn't actually drive a taxi, he drives a motorbike, and he doesn't have a house. So I've actually seen them, like, this is how poor this place of China was. They would like somehow manage to like lay down on their bike and have a back pillow resting on like the back part of the bike and just sleep on that, and then wake up in the day and just, you know, bring people around for like 1 yen, which is like 20 cents, and it like give you a 15-minute ride from place A to place B. So basically, all these guys, they love weddings because first they get free cigarettes, which, you know, I don't smoke, so they kept giving them to me, and I was like, I don't need these, so I was just sort of giving them to the first biker I saw, and they would love me from that the moment onwards, and they go there for the free food. So they sit me in this table, and no joke, it's me and it's 7 bikers. And when you're in a Chinese restaurant of that tier, you don't pay for like good food. I mean, the food sometimes can taste good as well, but you pay for something that's hard to cook and something that's rare. So that's what you're expected to eat. So a lot of this stuff, for your 16-year-old white guy who hasn't traveled that much in his life, is scary. So also, you've got like a couple of plates around the table, and you've got one plate, which is your main plate, which has got rice on it, and you sort of dip everything on there, and then have the rice, and this is super flavoursome. And you have a second plate, which basically, as you eat, anything that doesn't go down, that you can't chew, you basically like spit back out onto this like waste plate, if you like. So it's again, being surrounded by these bikers that have such bad living conditions, and just seeing them just sort of like eat and like spew out, it was just like, oh man, it's not what you want to see. So and also being at this restaurant, they kept giving me all this really strange food. So I was like, at a certain point, I got one of the waiters. I would just like some water with a lemon in it, because I saw this, they were giving out waters with lemons, so I was like, hey, I'm going to treat myself to some water with a lemon in it, right? That's all I'm going to have until I get home, and then after I'm going to eat when I get there, because I can make my own food there as well. So they bring me this water with a lemon on it, and I just put it on this table, and like, you know, I start sipping it. And at this point, I've become great friends with all the guys at my table, because I'm giving out all the stuff they give to me. I'm just sort of redishing it back out. And so yeah, and I'm sort of just drinking my water, and the biker across the table from me, he sort of looks at me, and he's like, he sort of smiles and says something. Now I couldn't understand him, because again, he also spoke with a bit of a dialect. Not that I would have understood him anyway, because my Chinese wasn't that good, but they're even harder to understand. And he just said something and smiles, and so I'm sort of eating there, and I'm like, I sort of smile back, because that's what you do. I'm just trying to be polite. He gets his chopsticks, dips them in my glass, takes out the lime, puts it into his mouth, eats it, and then like again, like spits it back out. And I was like, the one thing I ordered, like, you know, the one thing that was just clean, that I just wanted to have, like, he just like polluted like that. I was like, alright, I'm done, I'm not eating anything at this restaurant. But yeah, it was just like, oh man, classic moment. But yeah, and basically it ended up that they realized that I was there, so they ended up, there was like these wedding tapes of the people that were getting married, so it was like, it must have been a really like up-class wedding, because it was just massive, and there was all these extra things. And in this wedding tape, there was like them two and all these sort of shots of them living and like in normal life, and there was all these like pre-recorded Chinese messages like they're getting married and we wish them the best and all that sort of stuff. And because I was there, they put on like the English subtitles, and again, they were completely wrong. Like there was not one sentence that was grammatically correct. So I ended up having a good time just sort of reading those and you know, having a laugh. And I managed to get home safely. And that was just one of my days in China, just to give you an idea of how funny that experience was. And let me know if you like videos like this, and I'll post more. Bye.